Well, hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Keeper of the Flame podcast. How are you this morning, this afternoon, or this evening, whenever, wherever it is that you are listening to our podcast? So, it is April 6th. I'm trying to explore some different ways that I can interact with you. And I want to try to do more live interaction. But especially in this portal, in this branch of the PowerGirl multiverse, since this is the exposure branch, we are creating ambiance. We are taking it easy on ourselves. We're going to figure out a way to get this done as with as little discomfort as possible. So the other day I tried to do a live, and although it was a lot of fun, I decided that it is too much for this genre, because we are talking about some very uncomfortable topics, and we are trying to be as positive as possible and respectful and honorable as possible. And most of all, we're trying to take it easy on PowerGirl because she has been through a lot. And yes, I am speaking of myself in the third person. Because sometimes you got to do that. Sometimes you got to look outside yourself and try to understand how others are perceiving you. So that's one way of doing it. But anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Anyway, I came across something this morning as I was browsing social media that was so blatant and so in my face that I got up and did a podcast. And that is not this podcast because I needed to get that podcast out of my system before I did this podcast. So I am in a much better space. I've now had my coffee. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Gary. And it is a rainy day, so we're going to stay home today by the fire. And I want to show you, tell you what I found for you, that I don't know if you've had the pleasure of seeing it firsthand. So I know we talk a lot about on social media, in the interwebs, in the multiverse, the metaverse, whatever you want to call it, the ether world, the digital space. When we are there, if you don't notice, we have our own vernacular. We have our own way of thinking and saying and speaking. It's very, very interesting what a fertile landscape it is for social engineering.
While no single man can take full credit for the rise of American advertising, Edward Bernays certainly deserves more than most. Known today as the father of public relations, Bernays was responsible for campaigns that changed the lives and minds of the American citizen forever, having a hand in everything from political leaders to smoking culture and what Americans ate for their breakfast. He was a self-proclaimed master of propaganda, and while others thought it a dirty word, Bernays recognized its power and the effective moral benefits it brought to society. A deeply controversial individual, Bernays himself boasted that Nazi propagandist Joseph Goebbels read his books and used his techniques. His methods blurred the lines between effective advertising and outright brainwashing. But to understand American branding and consumer culture today, the impact made by Bernays and his methods and philosophy cannot go unrecognized. Born in 1891 in Vienna, Austria, to American parents, Edward Louis Bernays was the nephew of the great Sigmund Freud. But he didn't stay in Austria long, moving to America when he was young and gaining an education in agriculture. Despite this, he had no passion for the industry and chose journalism as his first career. His first exposure to the powers of spin came in 1912, when he became co-editor of the Medical Review of Reviews. Writing a review for a controversial play, Bernays described it positively as a propaganda play that fought for sex education and began to see how effective such strategies could be. His talents began to shine when he lobbied support for the play and its message from the likes of John D. Rockefeller Jr. and Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt. Staying in theatre, he began to work as a creative press agent for plays and performers, leaning on controversy and emotive issues to help promote plays. On one occasion, using a sexually suggestive photograph of the star, while, in another, promoting a play in line with an orphan charity. Bernays was developing the skills that would soon come to define his career and caught the attention of the Committee on Public Information as the US joined the First World War in 1917. This is where Bernays would find his true calling. During his time working for the CPI, Bernays worked to build support for the war in the American population and would later describe what he did as psychological warfare. In 1919, he used the term propaganda in a press release to describe the function of the CPI, and this uncomfortable word and connotations resulted in the demise of the organization. But the lessons Bernays learned would stay with him. Seeing how effective propaganda could be during wartime, Bernays began to realize the same methods could be used in peace. Psychological warfare, he believed, could be waged on the American population to much benefit to the individual and the organization, and so began his career as a public relations consultant. Bernays incorporated his Uncle Sigmund's psychoanalytic theory to help define his early techniques. He recognized that people were motivated by other desires, that the population had a herd mentality, and that their opinion was something that could easily be manipulated. In the 1920s, Bernays was hired by the Beechnut Packing Company to help them improve their sales in bacon. The problem, Bernays quickly realized, wasn't in the product or price, but in the American mindset. At the time, a light breakfast was considered the healthiest way to start the day. Bernays sought to overcome this by approaching around 5,000 physicians and having them sign a statement that a hearty breakfast of bacon and eggs was far healthier. He had this published nationally, and when the American population read the report, the sales of bacon shot up, and what is today considered the all-American breakfast was born. But Bernays' mastery wasn't just able to increase sales, he also has a hand in politics. In 1924, he worked with President Calvin Coolidge, altering his stuffy public image and leading him to re-election in what is considered one of the first publicity stunts on an American presidential campaign. He was then approached by Lucky Strike's cigarettes. They had two problems when they hired Bernays in 1927, both linked to women. Firstly, sales of cigarettes in women were low, not helped by the taboo of women smoking in public. Secondly, their green packaging was considered an unfashionable color. Changing the packaging would have been too expensive, so instead, Bernays convinced fashion designers to include the Lucky Strike's shade of green in that season's designs, and held a green ball at a fancy hotel, where the most fashionable and famous members of society attended, all dressed in the color, and had the whole event photographed and printed nationwide. Suddenly, the color green wasn't so unattractive anymore. For the far deeper issue of taboo, Bernays leaned heavily into women's liberation, acknowledging that cigarettes had long been associated with men, and creating the link between equality and public smoking. He marketed cigarettes as torches of freedom, and at demonstrations he hired women to wield their cigarettes and had them photographed and printed in the news. Women across the country followed suit, and sales skyrocketed. But arguably, Bernays' most controversial campaign was while working for the United Fruit Company. Hired in the early 1940s, it started innocently enough by linking bananas to good health and helping boost sales. Bernays recognized early the need to promote a positive spin on the growing countries in Central America. That changed when the Guatemalan dictatorship was toppled by a coup d'etat in 1945 and a new democratically appointed president was elected. This should have been seen as a positive change, but the United Fruit Company had long exploited the Guatemalan workers with low wages, agreed under the previous government, and this change saw their profits drop as workers went on strike. Bernays had the revolution portrayed in a communist light in the national media, of which he was the primary supplier of information. In Guatemala, the UFC were linked to the old regime, but in America, Bernays portrayed the UFC as a victim of the communist menace, spreading misinformation and lobbying the US government. This eventually resulted in a further coup in 1954, assisted by the US intelligence agency, and a return to the old ways of oppression for the Guatemalan workers and high profits for the UFC. While he also worked for non-profit organizations and reportedly turned down offers from people and organizations he didn't want to be associated with, such as the Nazi Party, Francisco Franco, and Richard Nixon amongst others, Bernays was a man who often saw past the moral obstructions of his work. The term public relations is preferred as a glossier name for what Bernays did, but the man himself did not shy away from the reality. He believed in propaganda as a power of good, and argued that people will be manipulated one way or the other, so it was the duty of a good propagandist to ensure the correct ideals were promoted in society, which he called the engineering of consent, and without it, a democratic society would fall apart. His most famous book, called Propaganda, published in 1928, became a Bible to public relations and advertising companies across the country and abroad, with many of his techniques being used by the Nazi Party after he turned them down. But by the mid-40s, following the events of the Second World War, public relations became the term of choice in the industry, and much of his later books, essays and articles reflect this. He lived a long life, dying in 1995 aged 103 years old, with the American nation changed forever. Bernays virtually invented the idea of public relations. Before his methods became popular, products were simply advertised in the hopes to appeal to a demographic. But what Bernays introduced was the idea of creating a want or a need in the consumer's mind, targeting their deepest desires, altering trends and public perception, and telling people what they wanted, needed, and believed. One of the most significant Americans of the last century, he remains little known outside the public relations world. But his reputation remains a result of his own personal public relations campaign to portray himself as America's #1 publicist. While Bernays wasn't concerned about the moral dilemma behind his work, deeming it essential to a democratic society's success, today he can be seen as both a pioneer and a brainwasher. But it is hard to consider the world of marketing, public relations, and political campaigns without the use of techniques created and promoted by Bernays. The man who brainwashed America, in his belief, for the greater good. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more. We promise we won't brainwash you, it's entirely your choice. But you know it's the right thing to do.
Here we go. So if you're not following PowerGirl on Facebook, that's cool. You don't have to. I would stay off of Facebook if I could, but I do like to go on here to get the word out. This is how we communicate with each other now. So this is my Facebook page, and I don't know how much of it anybody ever sees. I don't get very much interaction on it, which is one of the reasons why I don't spend very much time on it. So it's very, but it is a portal to peer through. I mean, this is something I learned from the millennials in my household who were, incredibly intelligent and cutting edge kids. Anyway, something that I came across this morning as I was waking up, and, it was very, very obvious to me. So I shared it on my page, but again, I don't know how much interaction I get because whenever I share something, I get, like a couple here, a couple there. And I think that those are just the diehards that are actually maybe even going to my page to look at my stuff, because I feel like I'm just being completely shadow banned on Facebook. I have no way of proving that. I have no time to prove it, but that's what I feel. That's what it looks like. So anyway, this is a very interesting page. It's not a person, it's a page that I have come across. And I immediately recognized it by the AI imagery. It's very, very close to a photograph, but that is actually an AI image. This is something that we talk a lot about on Supernatural Sunday on the PowerGirl Power Hour. We are talking about portals. We are talking about the metaverse. We're talking about AI, quantum computing, and all of those things. We're trying to digest it, to understand it, and to understand how to exist in this world that is so much, it's, I mean, we are living in its world now. This is what the metaverse and the multiverse is. It's human beings existing within AI. So this to me was very, very obvious, and I don't think we realize that that's what's happening when we're in the metaverse, or the I like to call it the multiverse, because I like to go off in a lot of different directions. Yeah, this is very, very alarming. So anyway, first thing, like I said, that I noticed is the AI imagery. That is definitely not a person. It looks like it. It looks like a photo, but it looks like CGI to me. So anyway, that's the first thing. The other thing I noticed about this was a lot of followers. Almost, 500,000 followers. And no following. So that's very interesting. As somebody who has organically built a page, and kind of barely done that myself, it's very interesting to see that this person was able to gather this kind of a following without ever having to follow anyone else or integrate or network with anyone else. So that's the number one red flag. I mean, that's a big red flag for me. Then if you look deeper into the about of this, I'm calling it a bot, you'll see that in the bio, mental health awareness, associated disorders, possible trigger warning. And then when you go into the content, you will definitely see, and it's almost, it's just really feels like a trigger factory to me. So that's what I have observed, just at a very, very high level, because I can't even dive into this stuff because it's so triggering for me. So anyway, this is they're calling themselves a blogger. We at this point, I'm seriously doubting that there's a person behind this. Now that I see that it's coming out of Washington, D.C., wow. I mean, I don't know how much more obvious it can possibly get, but it actually does get more obvious. So if you'll see here, this was created October 11th, 2016. Well, what was happening October 2016? An election. A very, very contentious, a very, very controversial. I mean, I didn't even vote in that election because it was such a clown world. I thought, remember back when 2016 was clown world, guys? Oh. Right? Like, it is, God, just in 7 years of what we've been through. But anyway, I digress. I just wanted to point out the time this was created in Washington, D.C. was October 2016, when Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were neck and neck for the presidency. When the biggest upset in American history, or so it was spun, right? Okay, so that's don't forget. As a matter of fact, I'm going to take you there right now. We're going to go to SGT Report, one of my favorite websites, one of my favorite sources of information, because he always reminds you that don't ever forget what happened on October 15th, 2020, when YouTube terminated both SGT Report YouTube channels without any warning. And not only did YouTube wipe out SGT report, but they wiped out everybody else that was speaking dissidence against the new normal. Don't forget what was happening in October 2020. That's right, another election. So this is just two things that I immediately connected when I started to see what was going on in this page. So do you notice anything else when just looking at the very, very surface of this page? Can you get any more monotone? Can you get any more monotonous? Can you get any more obvious? There is not a person behind this page. I don't think there ever was. We're talking a lot these days about Twitter and the Twitter files and the FBI and all of these things. And the nefarious nature of this particular page is it is harvesting those who consider themselves to be mentally misunderstood, which in large part are people that are victims of the system that made this very page. It's very, very obvious to me. If you read through this Facebook page, you can see that it has a lot of interaction and that people are definitely triggered. And what it really frightens me is it's nothing but garbage. It's all about hang on to your resentments. Nobody understands you. It's really very sad. And the thing, let's see if I go back. I'm sorry, again, working through the triggers. I can do this. So this is what I saw. This is the post that I saw when I was scrolling through my feed, which for some reason, the AI, I told my Kingdom Warrior the other day, Jason Avila, it is laughing at me because I don't know about you guys, but anybody who's out there that's awake and aware, that's a digital warrior, that's trying to spread truth on Facebook and elsewhere, I don't know if you've noticed, but I am getting pummeled by satanic and incredibly explicit, just hateful pages like this. And it's getting to where it's almost like Sabrina Whitehorse and I were talking about the dream awakens upon the dreamer and becomes aggressive.
Got the basic layout. Bookstore, cafe, almost everything else is here too.
Who are the people?
Projections of my subconscious.
Yours?
Yes. Remember, you are the dreamer. You build this world. I am the subject. My mind populates it. You can literally talk to my subconscious. That's one of the ways we extract information from the subject.
How else do you do it?
By creating something secure like a bank vault or a jail. The mind automatically fills it with information it's trying to protect. Understand?
Then you break in and steal it.
Well,
I guess I thought that the dream space would be all about the visual, but it's more about the feel of it. My question is, what happens when you start messing with the physics of it all? Something, isn't it?
yes, it is. Because my subconscious feels that someone else is creating this world. The more you change things, the quicker the projections start to converge on you.
Converge?
They sense the foreign nature of the dreamer. They attack like white blood cells fighting an infection.
Like they're gonna attack us?
No. Just you.
This is great, but I'm telling you, if you keep changing things like this...
Jeez. Mind telling your subconscious to take it easy?
It's my subconscious. Remember, I can't control it.
Very impressive. I know this bridge. This place is real, isn't it?
Yeah, I cross it every day to get to the college.
Never recreate places from your memory. Always imagine new places.
Well, you gotta draw from stuff you know, right?
Only use details, a street lamp or a phone booth, never entire areas.
Why not?
Because building a dream from your memory is the easiest way to lose your grasp on what's real and what is a dream.
Is that what happened to you?
Listen, this has nothing to do with me, you understand?
Is that why you need me to build your dreams?
Get off of me. Back up.
Hey!
Back up!
Mom!
Get off!
Mom! Let me go! Let me go! Mom! Wake me up! Wake me up! Wake me up!
And so the more awake to the AI I become, the more savvy to the algorithms I become, the more hateful and ugly it gets to me. And this is just something that I woke up to this morning. And it's just garbage. It's absolute garbage. This cannot have come from anybody who's ever been a parent, because this is not how parents think in any way, shape, or form. You know, families have difficult times sometimes. Trauma bonds and trauma patterns get, passed down from generation to generation. This is actual science. It's actual trauma technology, and it is used as technology by the CIA. It is used against us. Check this out. First movie created with artificial intelligence. Hollywood just became obsolete.
Massive alien spacecraft just appeared out of nowhere and jumped into Earth's atmosphere. The ships are unlike anything.
Panic is spreading across the globe in the wake of the arrival of alien spaceships. Reports of unusual activity and sightings have led to fear and uncertainty, with many wondering what the aliens' intentions may be.
World leaders are working to calm the public and assure their safety, but the situation remains tense. Experts continue to investigate and gather more information as the world grapples with this unprecedented event.
My fellow Americans, today we face a challenge unlike any other in our history. As you may be aware, strange alien objects have arrived on our planet. While we do not yet know their intentions, we must remain calm and approach this situation with the utmost care. I have ordered our government officials to work with international partners to gather more information and develop a coordinated response. We will remain vigilant and steadfast in our efforts to protect our planet and its inhabitants.
President Vladimir Putin has accused the U.S. of inviting the aliens to our doorsteps through unprovoked attacks on the UFOs that were recently shot down over the U.S. and Canada.
Putin suggested that the U.S. attacks on the UFOs may have broadcasted Earth's location to the aliens. He added that the world is about to pay a heavy price for what he called America's outrageous actions.
In a bold move that has sent shockwaves through the international community, Russia, China, and India have announced that they are teaming up to make first contact with the aliens. The new plan involves a joint task force of scientists, engineers, and other experts working together to develop technology capable of communicating with the aliens.
The United States government has expressed that it will not support Russia's efforts to make first contact with the aliens. In a statement released earlier today, President Joe Biden stated that the U.S. government will block any actions that could potentially put national security at risk.
Today, I ordered our brave men and women at the Space Force to do whatever it takes to prevent Russia and its allies from making first contact with the aliens. We are determined to prevent any exchange of technology between the aliens and these nations, which could jeopardize the national security of our country. I urge the international community and our NATO allies to stand up to this unprovoked attack on global security.
Sleepy Joe will not handle this situation very well. The aliens could be hostile for all we know. But if I were the president, the aliens would have loved me. Ask anyone in Area 51, and they will tell you the truth. When I visited Area 51, everyone was impressed by how aliens greeted me. I was the smartest person in the room. I dissected some aliens, and they didn't even scream. Nobody heard them scream. I created Space Force. I don't think Sleepy Joe will give me any credit.
Concerns continue to rise over Russia's growing interest in exchanging technology with the aliens, which could put global security at risk. Russia said it's committed to sharing any alien technology it receives with the rest of the world and will be transparent with the international community.
NATO is prepared for situations like this.
The NATO allies, led by the U.S., have announced joint efforts to prevent Russia from making first contact with the extraterrestrials.
And let there be no doubt, the commitment of the United States to our NATO alliance and Article 5 is rock solid.
Footage resurfaced of two SpaceX rockets blasting off to space in an unannounced launch. Witnesses believe they could be carrying delegates of the NATO allies who are tasked with communicating with the aliens.
A group of delegates representing Russia and its allies left off on board the Soyuz spacecraft on their way to make first contact with the extraterrestrials in orbit. President Vladimir Putin himself attended the launch and said that Russia will do everything within its power to protect its allies.
Russia has declared NATO's attempt to make first contact with the aliens an act of war, as delegates of several nations await in orbit for any sign of alien response. Russian Minister of Foreign Affairs Sergei Lavrov accused SpaceX of sending nuclear weapons into orbit in an attempt to deter Russia and its allies from making any contact with the extraterrestrials.
NATO allies, led by the U.S. government, have rejected Russian claims of smuggling nuclear weapons into orbit. Tensions in orbit continue to escalate as the race to make first contact with aliens reaches new heights. According to witnesses, Russia launched 3 Soyuz spacecrafts in the last 24 hours. Intelligence reports revealed that the spacecrafts may contain nuclear warheads, a move that comes amid fears of further escalation in orbit.
Protests have erupted around the globe calling for the U.S. and Russia and their allies to form a joint team of delegates to make first contact with the extraterrestrials. Over 20,000 peace advocates, including Nobel Peace Prize laureates, signed a joint letter requesting the delegates of both sides in orbit to work together and put Earth's interest first.
Russia and its allies have warned the NATO from any attempts at sending astronauts to the alien spaceships as it begins intensifying its surveillance throughout orbit. President Joe Biden said that Russia's empty threats will not deter the NATO from sending its representatives to make first contact with the aliens.
The countdown to the first contact with the aliens has begun. The NATO announced today that its delegates will approach the alien spaceships starting tomorrow, a move that defies Russia's threats of retaliation with a swift response. The allies of both groups have reportedly been gathering a stockpile of nuclear warheads in orbit.
Houston, this is Earthstream. We're approaching the gate of the mothership. Godspeed, Earthstream. We're counting on you.
Americans, we gate, or there will be consequences. Americans, this is your last warning.
What's that object that's approaching us? I don't know. Houston, there is something coming out of the Soyuz spacecraft. We're not seeing anything in our systems, Lieutenant Robert. Any idea what it could be?
A short time ago, I ordered the use of our nuclear arsenal against Russia and its allies, who have crossed the line with the massacre of our delegation in orbit. Together with our NATO allies, we have launched the Wrath operation against every country that was involved in this massacre. I want everyone to accept the new harsh reality that the world will never be the same again. I urge our citizens to take shelter in our nuclear bunkers until the Wrath operation ends. We don't know how long it will take, but we are determined to win.
Greetings, humans. We have observed your actions with great disappointment. Your inability to see beyond your own selfish desires has blinded you. You have failed to recognize the interconnectedness of all things and the importance of cooperation and respect. We have come here to return your artifact that carried a misleading message of hope and togetherness. You are not who you claim to be. We had hoped that by making contact with you, we could share our knowledge and wisdom and help guide you towards a more enlightened path. But it seems that you are not yet ready to receive our message, and that your hearts and minds are still closed to the possibility of a better future. We are the guardians of the universe. We are the cleansers. Our prime directive is to eliminate any hostile civilizations that could pollute the universe with their greed, ignorance, and carelessness. We will give your planet another chance, but we must cleanse it first to prepare it for a new civilization. We hope that one day, a better civilization from your planet will join us in exploring the wonders of the universe, rather than destroying them. Farewell, humans.
Hello from the children of planet Earth.
تحياتنا للأصدقاء في النجوم.
Здравствуйте, приветствую вас.
Сантьягури салути.
Конничева. Генки desu ka?
So here is a blatant in black and white, forgive my obvious pun, but a blatant in black and white of how they are engineering us to be hateful towards each other, to hold on to resentments, to not forgive each other, to hold on to our trauma, to hold on to our past. I can tell you that the greatest freedom that I have ever experienced is forgiving those in my life who didn't know any better, who did the best they could with what they had, and who maybe at the time in the moment were unable to give me what I needed as a child. But as they grew older, as they went through their own development, as they became adults themselves, started to understand. When you see that 500,000 people are interacting with a page like this that is full of black and white meme after meme after meme, and they're divulging themselves because they feel like it's a safe place, but they're being completely, obviously, socially engineered. So, I would suggest, and in a time where lies and propaganda are hitting us in the face constantly, and for some reason we can't seem to avoid it or even resist it, that it is avant-garde. It is cutting edge to forgive, to process your trauma, to overcome your trauma bonds, to break your chains of slavery. And the best way I know how to do that is Yeshua HaMashiach. If you want to do it like this, get with him, lay it down. This is the season. The season is now. He is here. He is waiting for you. He gave it all for you. He didn't pass the cup. He accepted the cup. He took the cup. He took the stripes. And by his stripes, we are healed. Some of these wounds are too deep. They go too far. They hurt too much. He's the only way. That's why he's the only way. Because he's the only one who died for you. And more than that, he's the only one who rose again. So that's what he's done for me. That's what happened to me. I have an experience of him every day. This is a perfect example of the enemy trying to get in my head and to hurt me, to prick me, to make me bleed. When in fact, because I have been able to get outside of myself and lay it all down at the cross and give it all to him, because my burden is light, even though my yoke is heavy. When I see this, I just see an opportunity to bring it to you, to show you. If there's somebody in your life who is a little too hung up on social media, and they're struggling with their resentments, and they're struggling with their trauma, and they're struggling with their pain, this might be a source. This might be something that they're digesting, that they're letting into their eye gates, that they're letting into their mind. And I like to put it on the radar. I like people to know where the hazards are. That's what I've learned. That's what I know. That's my wheelhouse. If you're a parent, if you have a teenager that's struggling with identity issues, I mean, these bots are everywhere on social media. And I say Facebook can throw it in my face all they want, because I'll just expose it. I'll just continue to show you. That's what I'm doing. I'm just showing you what he shows me. And I'm barely keeping up. But this was so in my face that I had to bring this to you. And that's what we're doing. So be safe out there. And keep an eye on your kids. Because this is pretty obvious to me. Dead giveaway, pathetic, AI generated, absolutely, definitely geared to divide and conquer. I am so glad that Facebook throws this in my face. I am so glad that I learned how to flip the script on the enemy. I'm just so grateful. That's all I can say. So anyway, just a heads up on this. I wanted to let you know, don't forget, these people are not your friends. Turn off the mainstream media, guys. They're trying to kill you. They're literally trying to kill you.
Certainly we need to understand that we are being set upon by something dramatically evil. I think we all understand that. And I've read many, many times on air what the former FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover said in 1956, and I'm going to read that right now. He said, "The individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists. The American mind simply has not come to the realization of the evil which has been introduced into our midst. This evil rejects even the assumption that human creatures could espouse a philosophy which must ultimately destroy all that is good and decent." And he is known as an author of The Masters of Deceit. And again, that's FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover.
I know that sounds crazy, but it is what's happening. They are lying to you. They are leading you down the wrong path. We need to start changing the way we think. You know, we need to get savvy to what this AI thing is, because it's here. It's here. CBDCs or whatever they're called, you know, whatever they're called. I can't even keep up with it, guys. Digital currencies here. Social credit system is here. The Great Reset is here. And it's going to be up to we the people how much root it takes, but it's taking quite a bit of root. So, hey, if I just got a couple hundred people that want to hang out with me by my campfire, I'm totally cool with that, because that's way more than I ever expected. So thank you so much, and I hope this was valuable to you. I hope you can keep an eye out. Most importantly, I really, really hope that you can forgive. I'm working on it myself. I'm far from perfect. I know that sometimes I even come off a little angry, but I own that anger, and it's authentically me. So I am not here to put on airs or to pretend that I'm something that I'm not. I'm sharing some very deep and personal stories with you, because this is the new normal, and it's getting less and less human. And I'll fall on that sword every day and twice on Sundays. So anyway, guys, I just want to thank you so much for hanging out with me, and take care, and we'll see you again real soon.
Who start to mold a new reality, closer to the heart, closer to the heart. Blacksmith